This is, I think, a very important topic when it comes to deer hunting, and that's white-tailed deer in the wild. A wild, free-ranging deer is a lot different than a deer that's it's captive in an area where they're doing research and they're feeding it different types of foods. They're feeding it different types of supplemental feed. The deer is confined to an area that's fenced in, and it's 100% different than a wild, free-ranging deer. And I feel like a lot of people get this mixed up and confused when they compare nutritional supplements to a fenced deer and nutritional supplements to a wild, free-ranging deer. And I want you to think about the term or the phrase wild, free-ranging deer. It's different than a captive deer. And I feel like this will relate to a lot of people and especially help you guys when it comes to actually hunting. I'm not going to get into the science of deer because I'm not a scientist. I'm not a wildlife biologist. I'm giving you my observations, my research that I've done on my own, and from experience of hunting 22 years, and from the experience of working on food plots, feeding deer, trying to supplement, feed them, hunting them, planning food plots like I just mentioned, habitat management plans and goals, and testing different plants, seeing what deer like, seeing what they don't like, trying different things each year, seeing how the deer react, and I'm giving you that experience in today's video. If you guys are new, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and I hope you pay attention to the video. So a wild, free-ranging deer is, you have to consider that that deer consumes, back in the day, I used to think, and from a lot of research, deer would consume anywhere from 4 to 5 pounds of food per day, depending on the food that's available. Well, recently some new research came out, and I kind of thought that it was higher. In the past, as years go on, you learn different things, and I felt that deer consume more than that. Well, some new research came out over the past couple of years stating that now they think that deer consume 6, 7, 8 pounds of food per day. And I tend to believe that it's on the higher end of that. Obviously, it's depending on the amount of food they have available within the area. Some areas, on a wild, free-ranging deer is going to be a lot different than other areas, and this could change, literally a couple miles away in different parts of the world, depending where you're at. And, up here where I'm at in the Northeast, if you drive around and you walk through the woods, different properties and such, there's a browse line. And there's a browse line because there's too many deer compared to the amount of food that the wild deer have. And when that happens is you have a limited amount of food to feed the wildlife. And the first thing you'll typically see with that is you'll see that browse line through the woods, and the deer will actually look unhealthy and skinny. Their face is kind of sunk in a little bit, and their ribs show because they're skinny. They have no fat content on them, and they're hungry, right? They're not getting that 6 to 8 pounds of food per day that's required to maintain their body weight, their antler development, and just general overall nutrition. They don't have that food resource to maintain that. So they look sick, they look unhealthy. If you just consider, if we don't eat for a while, we lose nutrients. We have a certain amount of daily nutrients that we're supposed to get per day to maintain or improve our health, and deer are the same way. So you see that browse line up here in the Northeast, and typically, on average, it's a general term because it changes, depending on how much food you have, but typically, per square mile, they say that about roughly 30 deer per square mile is a healthy average to have per square mile. Well, up here in the Northeast, some areas, there's 100 deer per square mile. You start shifting in different parts of the world out west, that changes dramatically. There may be 6 deer per square mile, there may be 10 deer per square mile, there may be 20 deer per square mile. So the less deer you have per square mile, the more food you're going to have. in theory. Well, in order for your property or for a wild deer to maintain their health, you have to assess your situation differently, on that property. You can't just take all this information that you gather on YouTube and different areas of social media where they say you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this in order to maintain this and this and this. You have to assess the situation on your property, do a study, how many deer that you have in a general term, per square mile on your property, and assess the food situation. If you're walking through the woods and you have zero food, or you do have browse in the winter time, but it's chewed down to the ground, then you have too many deer and not enough food. So you have to consider, if you want to improve that land, what are your options? Well, you can start increasing food plots. You can increase browse through hinge cutting, cutting down timber, allowing sunlight to reach the floor to get regeneration of woody browse and native plants and such. So you have to assess that differently on each property, because it can change literally a mile to 3 miles down the road. Each property is different. And the biggest problem most times is a limited amount of food. And when we're talking about a wild free-ranging deer, everybody wants to improve their land, or improve their land, so they try to grow bigger deer. Well, you have to consider, again, back to the term, a wild free-ranging deer. What is it going to take to really improve that land or deer, and can we actually do it? Well, I think you can, but the hopes of it is limited. And what I mean by that is, most hunters, from what I've seen, most of us are dealing with, an 1/8 acre, 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre food plot. And you have to think about, is that 1/2 acre food plot or 1/4 acre food plot really going to benefit a wild free-ranging deer? And the answer to that is probably not. If you're in an area that has tons of agricultural, where they're planting corn and soybeans and alfalfa and whatever it is that they're planting, you have to think, you're dealing with dozens or hundreds of acres of ag that the deer can, consistently feed in. And that's where they're going to get most of their nutrition. You have to think about a farmer in ag country, say you got Midwest, is where a majority of big bucks are shot. It's because there's ag land, the crops are manicured, they're limed, they're fertilized. Farmers are now using micronutrients, so they're increasing the palatability and nutritional content of those plants. You have less deer per square mile, so there's more food available to the deer. The deer are healthier, they're bigger, they have bigger antlers, and they can reach their genetic potential with a higher amount of nutritionally available food. Go in different parts of the world, Northeast, where I'm at right here, we don't have tons of agriculture. We have too many deer per square mile, and it's all closed canopy forests, hardwoods, and there's no sunlight reaching the floor, there's no regeneration, there's no woody browse. You walk through the woods, it's a browse line, there's nothing available to the deer look skinny, they look unhealthy, and they have small antlers, and they're all inbred because there's way too many deer per square mile. So back to improving a deer, if you're in an area such as that, you need a lot of food to be able to benefit that wild deer. And I'm not talking a 1/4 acre food plot. If you're in a giant wooded area surrounded by nothing but woods, you need a lot of food, acres, 2, 3, 4 acres, 5 acres, 6 acres of food on your property to be able to increase that nutritionally available food to the deer in order to help benefit them, put a few extra pounds on, put a few extra inches on the antlers. If you're planting a 1/4 acre food plot in a huge wooded area thinking that you're benefiting the deer, you're probably not. Is it going to hurt? No, but you're not going to be able to see that true potential with that small of a food plot. Now, if you're doing it, and thinking that, hey, if I plant this food plot, it's going to create, a tractability part for bow hunting, then by all means do it. But my point of this video is it takes a lot to benefit a wild free-ranging deer, and you have to consider how deer get nutrition. Deer get nutrition through green growing plants, woody browse, acorns and fruit trees and food plots that we plant. Food plots are a supplemental program that we do to help increase nutritional available food to the deer, and also to hunt over and create attractiveness to increase our chances of harvesting a deer. So in ag country, you have all this food around, and if you're wanting to plant a 1/4 acre food plot, and then you're going on social media saying that you're growing booners from this 1/4 acre plot, or you're putting out these minerals, or something like that, you're fooling yourself. Because is it going to hurt? No, but it's different. It's different than a captive deer compared to a wild deer. You have to consider these points when you're trying to improve your land, and you have to have realistic goals. Because if you don't have realistic goals, you're going to set yourself up for a huge disappointment. And if we didn't do anything, deer are going to get bigger. If we just leave deer alone, let them do their thing, they're going to get bigger each year. Can we help them? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But when you're going to help them, you have to do things properly. You have to consider, in ag country, like I mentioned, the soil and everything is manicured, lime, fertilized, micronutrients. They have all that available nutrients that the plants can pull from the soil, because the farmers are taking care of the soil. Most hunters are not. They're not liming, they're not fertilizing, they're not spraying micronutrients. So if you do that, if you follow the steps to a successful food plot and successful habitat planning methods, cutting some trees, allowing sunlight in to be able to photosynthesize the plants to increase vitamins and minerals in that plant from the sun, and you're doing all these different types of things, then you have a higher chance of benefiting that wild deer. But I always say, deer don't need our help, guys. They don't need our help. They live without us. Can we help them through certain methods if we do it properly? Yes, we can, but in most cases it's limited if you're working with a 1/4 acre food plot. I'm not saying 1/4 acre food plots or 1/2 acre food plots is bad. Each person has their own thing to work with, their own size property to work with. They're not bad things. But if you think that you're going to take a 110-inch deer and make it into a 190-inch deer within a year or 2 years, it's false. It's just not going to happen. Now what we can do is do these food plots and increase browse, and if you're planting fruit trees or whatever it is, increasing food availability, what you'll see is the deer will start gaining weight, the ribs will stop showing, you're spraying micronutrients, you're taking care of the soil, you're planting food plots to where you have something green and growing in the soil for as many months out of the year as possible is key. Then you'll start to reap the benefits of your hard work. So if you guys have any questions, post them down below. I respond to everybody's comment. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.